We're back with more of Disney's saddest deleted scenes that will undoubtedly have you reaching for your Kleenex box. Wait until you hear about the messed up original ending of The Hunchback of Notre Dame and how they changed it to a happier one instead. Here is part 2 of Disney's saddest deleted scenes you never knew about. Bambi. Bambi is the story about the adventures of a young fawn and his forest creature friends. They giggle and prance through the woods, and everything is fun and happy until they completely rip our hearts out. How do they do this? By taking Bambi's mother's life. Who can forget the horrible sound of that hunter's gunshot echoing through the trees? But this story of a Disney character losing a parent is anything but new. In fact, it's kind of Walt's thing. So why was this one so haunting? Maybe it's because we never actually see Bambi's mother's body. And poor Bambi's naive optimism that they both made it is just so devastating. But the scene could have been a lot worse. The original version of that scene was even more gruesome and horrifying. In the deleted scene, Bambi didn't just run away while only hearing that fateful gunshot. The scene showed Bambi finding his mother's impression in the snow. Then he sees a hunter dragging away his mother's lifeless body. Now that would have ruined countless childhoods all across the country. At least the final scene allowed kids to come to terms with Bambi losing his mother in their own time. The Lion King. Disney's The Lion King is an animated classic that has it all. It's got adorable lion cubs singing upbeat, colorful songs about being king. And it's got the most catchy song since It's a Small World. We're talking about Hakuna Matata, of course. But you might be surprised to find out that this fun-filled film almost had a forced marriage, too. Yikes. In this deleted scene, Scar is feeling dissatisfied. He has a conversation with Zazu about what's missing from his life. Scar asks what Mufasa had that he doesn't have. Zazu lists off a variety of things such as adoring subjects, the respect of his species, a loving family, and a devoted queen. Scar hears that last one and decides that he needs to marry a lioness and make her his queen. Just then, Nala walks in. Talk about rotten timing. Scar takes a creepy turn during his interaction with Nala. He tries to convince her to marry him, and let's just say she's not on board. So he tries to force her to marry him. He threatens her with banishment if she does not agree. This leads her to risk her life wandering through the jungle to look for help. Good call on deleting that scene, Disney. The mini endings of Charles Muntz in Disney's Up. Filmmakers revealed that they had to rewrite the ending of Disney's Up several times. It was a struggle to figure out a way to defeat the villain Charles Muntz. They wrote several versions of the scene before landing on the final version. At first, they were going to have Charles meet his demise by chasing Kevin the bird into this rock labyrinth. In this version, Muntz follows Kevin into the maze and can't find his way out. So he is just left to wander forever in this endless labyrinth. But they felt that took too much focus away from Carl and Russell. Then they were going to have Muntz run after Kevin into Carl's house on top of the blimp. The dogs are going to run in after him, causing the house to slip off the blimp. Muntz would then fall with the house to his doom. That's not the best for a number of reasons. Number one, the house represented Carl's wife, and they didn't want Muntz to go out with Ellie like that. And number two, that ending would have resulted in a whole lot of deceased canines. They finally went with Muntz getting caught in the balloon strings and falling with the balloons. Good call, guys. Robin Hood. If you're a fan of Disney's 1973 classic Robin Hood, you may be interested to know about this alternate ending. In this version, Robin gets wounded when he's escaping from the burning castle. One of the arrows being shot at him actually connects when he's in the water. Robin is rescued by Little John and taken to the church. There, Maid Marian and Little Sister treat Robin's wounds and take care of him. Prince John and Sir Hiss follow Robin. Seeing that Little John left the church, they believe him to be vulnerable. Prince John comes at Robin with a dagger with the intention of putting Robin out of his misery. But Maid Marian stands up to Prince John. She tells him not to come any closer just before King Richard shows up. King Richard makes everything all right again and all is well. The king knights Robin Hood as Sir Robin of Locksley. Then he orders Friar Tuck to marry Robin and Maid Marian, which he does. That's a very different ending than what was shown during the film's final scenes. Then Robin and Maid Marian ride away in the carriage, just like the final ending of the movie. Apparently, they took out the other stuff because they decided it was too dark for the younger audience. Tarzan. No matter which way you look at it, that leopard in Tarzan is just mean. Seriously, what is up with his hunger for helpless babies? In the opening of the movie, we see baby Tarzan and his parents surviving a shipwreck on their way to Africa. They wash up on shore and immediately build a pretty fancy treehouse. Then the film cuts to Kerchak and Kala with their little one. Then one night, Kerchak and Kala's baby gets up to chase a frog away from the safety of his parents. Mean old Saber takes the opportunity to turn the little guy into a late-night snack. They're devastated, but Kala later finds baby Tarzan in the abandoned treehouse after Saber attacked and took his parents. While there's evidence that Saber ate Tarzan's parents, we don't see the attack. We only see some paw prints and blood marks, but in the alternate opening, they actually did show the attack. It's a series of storyboard pieces shown on the special features. The scene has a pretty hardcore ending. It shows Tarzan's dad's body being dragged off by Saber. That scene would have given kids nightmares for weeks. Alice in Wonderland. There's a rather disturbing scene in Disney's 1951 classic, Alice in Wonderland. Luckily, it never made it into the movie. After we tell you about it, you'll see why. It starts with a fish footman arriving at the Duchess's house with an invitation from the Queen to play croquet. After the footman shouts across the moat, an accordion-type bridge suddenly shoots across the water. The Duchess's frog footman lazily falls out. As the footmen discuss the invitation, Alice sneaks onto the bridge and enters the home of the Duchess. When Alice enters the smoky kitchen, she sees an angry cook making pepper soup. It's total chaos as the Duchess is trying desperately to calm her ugly, sneezing, and crying baby. Alice asks the Duchess to do something to quiet the baby. The Duchess grabs a cork from a bottle and pops it into the mouth of the child, stopping the noise. The Duchess violently rocks the baby and sings a song about beating him when he sneezes. The Duchess is pulling the cork in and out of the screaming baby's mouth, which causes the cook to lose her temper. The cook begins hurling pots and pans at the baby, so Alice rescues the baby and runs away, but the child later turns into a pig and runs off. Yeah, we can see why that one didn't make the final cut. Lilo and Stitch. When Lilo and Stitch came out in theaters in 2002, the country was still recovering from the attacks on the World Trade Center from 2001. This was supposed to be the feel-good movie audiences needed, but it had a major problem. There was an action sequence at the end of the film that would have triggered a traumatized nation. They had to make a pretty big change to the ending before they released it. Originally, Lilo and Stitch had an action-packed ending where Stitch hijacked a commercial airplane to rescue Lilo. Stitch and his pals take over a 747 filled with scared passengers. Then they go on a high-speed chase, dipping through and clipping skyscrapers and coming pretty close to pedestrians on the ground. It's pretty triggering to watch. Obviously, the filmmakers couldn't show that ending after what the country had just been through on 9/11, so they rewrote it. In the final released version, Stitch takes over a red, white, and blue spaceship. And instead of flying through the city, the animators had it take place over Hawaii's mountains and volcano landscapes. This made for a much more pleasant movie-going experience for American audiences. It was definitely the right call. Who Framed Roger Rabbit? Who Framed Roger Rabbit is Disney's tribute to old film noir classics, but with animated and live-action characters interacting. It's full of clever dialogue, silly songs, funny jokes, and of course, a big mystery to solve. But there was one very sad scene that didn't make it to the final movie. Apparently, because of legal reasons, along with the complexity of the animation required, this scene was deleted from the script. But a fan dug up some storyboard art on this deleted scene, which displayed Marvin Acme's funeral. The sequence starts with Eddie arriving at the funeral and making his way through a long column of cars. In the upper right-hand corner of the drawing, you see a note that reads, "Toons Unload Casket." All the cartoon characters are sad and crying as the Toons carry Marvin Acme's casket. Goofy makes a joke about how tough it is being a pallbearer. Then Popeye cracks a joke asking why they're bearing Paul and that he thought they were bearing Acme. Bluto doesn't like this disrespectful comment, so they get into a little graveside brawl. This leaves Yosemite Sam as the only Toon left holding Acme's casket. He struggles to hold it up before deciding to just toss it into the open gravesite. Then a weepy foghorn leghorn begins the ceremony. That's a pretty sad scene for a silly Toon movie. Hunchback of Notre Dame.
Go on. Nobody wants to be cooped up here forever.
The Disney movie The Hunchback of Notre Dame was adapted from the novel, which was much darker than the film. They had to make some major adjustments to the story to cater to the younger audience. Even with the changes, the film is still pretty dark. In the movie adaptation, Quasimodo rescues Esmeralda from being burned at the stake by Frollo. He takes her to the safety of the bell tower. Frollo falls to his doom from the cathedral balcony, but Quasimodo, Esmeralda, and Phoebus survive. Quasimodo unites Esmeralda and Phoebus. Then he walks down the steps of the cathedral and is embraced by the public. Happy ending. The book, however, was much more depressing. In the book, Frollo hands Esmeralda over to the authorities, accusing her of a crime that he actually committed. She's sentenced to a public hanging, and Quasimodo pushes Frollo off the balcony in a fit of rage. Then, in an act of deep grief at losing Esmeralda, Quasimodo stays with her body in the grave and starves. About 18 months later, the tomb is opened and they find the bodies of Esmeralda and Quasimodo. They try to separate them, but their bodies just turn to dust and crumble away. That's a big old drag of an ending for a Disney film. It's no wonder they changed it to a more upbeat, happy ending instead. Which deleted scene did you think was the saddest? Let us know in the comments. Give this video a big thumbs up if you love Disney movies. Be sure to subscribe to The Things, and while you're at it, hit that notification bell. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.